Is football overcoached now? Are we losing the likes of Nani and Ronaldo who could do stuff off the cuff?
He's found the way of playing that is maximising their squad, so everyone's just copying the same thing now. People will take advantage of it. It's caused like a national crisis.
Why is it now gone backwards?
We've just massively overcomplicated it. People said pepper in football. There's a reason the phrase the dinosaur is an insult in football.
So we have a podcast called That's Offside, and one of the segments on the podcast talks about football fans' hot takes.
Okay.
Do you have any hot takes for us today?
Yep. Football in the 90s and in the early 2000s was better than football playing right now, for sure.
Ooh, let us know what you think, lads. Back to you, Dan.
Guys, what do we think? Big statement there. Agree or disagree?
I completely disagree.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you probably would say that as a Palace fan, given where Palace were in the 90s.
Did you watch
and
Palace in the 90s?
Maybe not your club, maybe not the quality
I know.
of players, but I think football as a whole. Do you think football was better to watch back then than it is in the current day and age?
I guess I am slightly nostalgic for that period because that's when I first got into football and I absolutely loved that era. United versus Arsenal for me is kind of my first formative memories of watching the Premiership as it was, and I don't think it was better. I think the football now is way better in terms of the levels. I mean, I still, when I really think about it, like everyone played 4-4-2. Like, what was everyone doing? Like, I find it kind of mad when you look at like England World Cup season from like 2002, and we couldn't figure out that actually maybe playing one up front and five in midfield might have actually been the solution to everything. Like, why did we just have to play 4-4-2 every time? But yeah, I also think that I think that the game is less scrutinised as well. I think we just accepted the game for what it is, and I think we just enjoyed the football a little bit more. But technical levels, you cannot compare. Like, some of the football that was played, even in the top flight, back in the 90s and noughties is dreadful football. And now we get to watch the best players in the world playing basically one of the best, most exciting versions of football every single week. And I do think we take that a little bit for granted sometimes.
Guys at home, let us know what you think about that as well. And don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. One thing I would say on that point is I was watching some old classics. Sometimes when I'm late at night scrolling or whatever, I'll go on YouTube and I'll watch classic games in the Premier League and stuff. I don't know, because I was watching, again, I'm a Spurs fan, but I was watching 4-4 Spurs versus Chelsea, Spurs versus Aston Villa. There was a 9-1 Spurs versus Wigan, 6-4 Spurs versus Reading. And don't get me wrong, the quality of football is not as good, nowhere near as good. But I don't know, I just think there was something about, like, I watched an old Manchester United versus Chelsea game where they're kicking lumps out of each other and it's end to end, it's like a basketball game. I don't know. I just think it's so rigid now. Football is so rigid. It's so structured. Even the academy system seems to be, you've got one pattern of play. You do that pattern of play. That's it. There's no creativity. What's your thoughts?
I think I'd agree broadly. There is less creativity and like less individual expression. But there are a few examples where I think people look back on it too fondly. Like, I saw something the other day talking about Nani at Man United. And if you watch a compilation of Nani, you'd think he was like Ronaldo. But in reality, he was so inconsistent, and like there's a reason he's not regarded as one of the best wingers ever. And then someone was trying to argue that he was better than Rashford at his best. And I'm like, that just isn't true. Like, Rashford was delivering on such a more consistent basis, but you forget about the bad games. Like, you're not going to go on TikTok and scroll through classic games. It's like, classic game here, guys. Spurs 0, Aston Villa 0, and it's like a terrible game. Like, people will probably look back on this period of time and go, wow, like, think about like Man City, Liverpool back in the day, or like something like Soboslai's free kick against Arsenal, even though that game was like broadly pretty boring. We'll go, wow, like, no players score goals like that anymore in big games. And people yearned for prime Barclays for ages, and this season has seen digression in terms of like more long balls, more long throws, more long set pieces, and it's caused like a national crisis because teams aren't passing as much as they used to. But like, people think that Tony Pulis' Stoke is like the best thing that's ever happened, but then when like Palace and Brentford do long throws, like, people saying it's ruining football. I just think people will always think what was happening like a few years ago is the best thing ever. People said pepper in football, and now people are saying that was the best era. I just think we'll always look back on things more fondly.
On that point, I was very lucky to be invited to a seminar last Thursday in Manchester where Jack Grealish was speaking. And one of the things that Jack was speaking about was creativity in football and how it's different from his time at Villa compared to Man City and obviously now he's at Everton, and how coaching has become so superior that maybe some things are a little bit overcoached. So what are your thoughts on that? Is football overcoached now? And are we losing the likes of Nani and Ronaldo who could do stuff off the cuff, and Grealish back in the day? Do you think it's too structured now?
I don't know if it's too structured. I just think that ultimately managers are doing what they have to do to win. I think Fulham have got a player this season called Kevin that we've signed, who you can just tell he's come from the Ukrainian league where he's effectively just been allowed to do what he wants. And in those first few games of Fulham, he looked absolutely electric, like a player that we'd never seen before, because he seemed to be allowed to do what he wants. And you can see slowly that Marco is effectively saying, no, don't always take on your man. Sometimes pass back to the left back, sometimes recycle play if you haven't got the right exact angle. And I guess that is a detriment, but ultimately it's what is going to allow Fulham to potentially get into the top 10, do well in the cups. I don't think that we're overcoaching players. I think it's just symptomatic of a very, very competitive league where fine margins matter, and teams have learned and evolved. And the thing about going back is actually the Premier League was never this competitive. I remember Fulham being in that kind of noughties era in the Premiership, and Fulham did not win away games. Like, you just never saw Fulham. There are several seasons where Fulham stayed up winning one away game all season. Like, that was all Fulham's. It was effectively beat West Brom and those kind of teams at home 2-0.
Like a little mini league.
That was how you had to stay up, and going to the top 6 and it was almost like you could never dream of winning at Stamford Bridge and Old Trafford and Highbury. And now actually you see, so many teams from the middle order, Bournemouths, Brightons, Palaces, Fulhams, go to big teams and bloody their noses all the time. And I actually think it's way more exciting to be a mid-table team fan now in the Premier League than it was back in the day, even if you did have Johan Elmander and JJ Okocha and all of those players that seem nice in hindsight. There were a lot of bad, very boring games that Fulham played in.
Yeah, I agree. I think you could argue that the floor has got higher, definitely, in terms of quality of player. Maybe the ceiling has got a bit lower, but logically, just from a footballing standpoint, it makes sense to have a robust system rather than rely on an individual player to win a game of football. Like, just because if that one player has an off day, you're not going to win. Whereas if 2 or 3 players have an off day, but your system is clear and people understand it and you can plug players into it, you're way more likely to win a game just by logic. But maybe there's a balance to be found. Like, I think the thing that sprung to mind when we were talking about that is how when we played Man United on Sunday, there was a point where at the end of the game, United were sat in and Palace were trying to break them down, and just no player had that kind of instinct of give me the ball and I'll make something happen. And it's something that Zaha had like so much. He would just demand the ball. And every time we've played anyone really since he's left and we were in that situation and there's no one doing it, I'm always reminded of him. And it's quite interesting that I think like Zaha, Eze and Elise all played their best football debatably under Roy Hodgson, not under Glasner or under anyone else, because he's like an old school manager of like, okay, I'll let those players express themselves, which is great in some ways, but equally was so frustrating and boring a lot of the time. And like, there's a reason the phrase the like dinosaur is an insult in football. If you call someone a dinosaur, you're not like, oh, so he plays proper football. That guy, we love him. It's like, oh, he's outdated.
Yes, guys, hope you're enjoying the show. And whilst I've got you, make sure to check out our sponsors, Bet442, and their sign-up options on the screen and in the description. T's and C's apply. 18 plus. Please gamble responsibly. You both made a point there where you said the Premier League's become so competitive now. And Ollie, you also said that this is probably the best talent we've ever had in the Premier League. However, do you think the Premier League is going back to what it used to be in terms of physicality, and with the amount of long throws, the amount of set pieces that are winning teams get? Arsenal very famous for their set pieces at the moment. Do you think we've had an era where it's very long ball, very stop-start? Then we've had a period of Pep Guardiola and maybe a little bit before that where it's very technical, and now we're going back. And if we are witnessing the most special players in the world and the best talent, why is it now gone backwards rather than more technical, if that makes sense?
I think football is like cyclical. Like the physical way of playing and being defensively robust and scoring corners was just a good way of countering possession-based football, right? But then if trying to like forecast what it will look like in the future, you look at a team like PSG who dominated football last year. They weren't physical in terms of corners and set pieces. They had super technical players and they were really high energy. I imagine a Premier League team will probably implement something similar in the next 2 or 3 years, and then that will become the norm again. And then like it changes the whole time. There was a period when Conte came to the Premier League and everyone started playing 3 at the back.
Yep.
Like, people just copy what the best team is doing, ultimately. That's how you can tell what a good manager is, I think. People have looked at Arsenal under Arteta. He's found the way of playing that is maximising their squad, so everyone's just copying the same thing now. But then that'll change in a couple of years.
Do you think it's so important to follow the trends as quick as possible? Like we're finding out with Liverpool this season, a lot of them are saying they're a bit more lightweight. And again, when you go into the set pieces and the longer balls into the box and things like that, and they're not really dealing with it very well, do you think that there are teams that, if they're too slow to react to a trend and certain ways that the Premier League is going, they will fall behind?
Maybe, but I think actually, and Fulham, isn't really following the trend right now. We're not heavily reliant on set pieces, and we're not really doing long throws, although occasionally, like this season, Fulham have been taking long throws, and that's actually been annoying me because we're not built for it. So don't half-assed try and follow the trend.
Because everyone else does
Don't
it.
just do long throw. Don't just get Ryan Sessegnon, who can't take a long throw, trying to do a long throw because everyone else is doing it. Like, stick to your guns. If you want to build a full team that way, then like do it, fair enough. And obviously the reason this has happened is because it's been seen as the way to try and beat City, who for a long time have been the team to beat, and now it looks like Arsenal becoming the team to beat with this style. No doubt other teams will evolve in order to find a way to beat Arsenal if they go on for a long period of dominance. So like, I think you can play your own way. You've just got to have a principle and a tactic and stick to it. I think there is still place for teams to play nice possession football. You've just got to own it and make sure you've got exactly the right players. There's no point Fulham trying to be Brentford, because we're not, and we haven't got the players to do that.
I want to know both your opinions on this. So obviously you spoke about it being such fine margins now to give managers a little bit more time, and the way the Premier League's going. I don't know if you both saw it. There was quite a big talking point photo that was out in the press recently. And it was Donnarumma that went down injured, and then in the corner you've got all the Man City players basically having another half-time team talk with Pep. A lot of people saying that's cheating and that should go out of the game, where the goalkeeper isn't necessarily injured or a player goes down and they use it for a quick 30 seconds, 45 seconds to 2 minutes to reshape their whole team. Is it cheating in your opinion, or is it, again, just something that is part of our game, is very clever, is very tactical, and there's nothing wrong with it?
I don't know if cheating's the right word. But
Do we want to see it?
No, definitely not. And I actually think that side of the game has got worse this season. I think even watching Chelsea Arsenal the other day, it was really physical, but at the same time, both teams were trying to get each other sent off the whole time. Every tackle, people were going down, especially when Chelsea got a player sent off. There was a period of that game where it was like, okay, Chelsea are now going to make it their mission to get an Arsenal player sent off. They were probably all appealing the whole time, and I get it because it does make a massive difference. But it's not what you want to see. Like, I think it's got a lot worse in Palace games this season as well. Even at Spurs Fulham, not to call Fulham out, I thought that at times in that game, especially Anderson was really guilty of it. It was going down like really dramatically, and I was just like as a neutral, I'm like, for God's sake, like just get on with it. But you can't moan at any one team, because every single team would do that. Palace wasted an unbelievable amount of time in the FA Cup final, an unbelievable amount, and I don't care about that at all because we won.
You don't care if it's your club.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I think but equally, you don't want to see it. It's not. I think especially in that context of Man City versus Leeds, where Leeds have just come from 2-0 down, it's 2-2. As a neutral, that does feel really harsh on Leeds. But often that is the difference between a top team and a not top team. It's just exploiting those gains.
I think the solution is quite simple, and I have heard that they're thinking of bringing this in, that if the goalkeeper goes down, obviously you can't make the goalkeeper go off the pitch for a minute, but they're thinking of the club whose goalkeeper has gone down will have to nominate an outfield player effectively to do the 60 seconds or whatever it is on the sidelines.
Oh, okay.
Which seems like the sensible thing, that they will just cut this out. Like, because I'm actually, it's amazing it's come back around, because Newcastle were really hot on this a few seasons ago. Nick Pope always used to go down, and it was almost became a bit of a running joke that he almost had a minute in the game.
Yeah.
It would be like the 20th minute, and he would get cramp every week or something like that. I don't know if they started it or whatever, and apparently I haven't seen a lot of EFL football, but apparently this is just happening at every level, every league. So this is something that's obviously widespread throughout football, and it is just ruined the game, because if you're there as a fan and your team's on top, it's just really frustrating when a goalkeeper of all players goes down with cramp. And
I don't think it's like a new thing either. I remember being a Spurs fan when Jaskalainen for Bolton used to come to White Hart Lane, and he would do this from minute one. He had cramp. I don't know how, but from minute one he'd have cramp. We talk about slowing the game down and the amount of things that, again, even jogging over for corners and taking 5 minutes over that, 5 minutes over the set piece, then we go down for injuries and stuff like that. Do we think that VAR, I know it's obviously a very wide spoken topic, but VAR and the amount of time it takes to make a decision now, and what we're even looking for now in VAR, is another thing that's contributing to the game being difficult to watch at times?
Yeah, I think it's kind of outcome bias with VAR. Like, again, for example, in the cup final, Palace massively benefited from a lengthy VAR check with Dean Henderson, but if he had been sent off, I would have said VAR was useless and terrible and a stain on the game, and I hate it. But like, because it went in our way, I'm like, yeah, VAR's great. I'm so glad they checked that. I always find VAR like an interesting one, because I still don't think it's a bad thing, and I still think that it's the right idea. But the check, I feel like the checks this season have got longer. Like the check for Caicedo's red card the other day was like, it's so blatantly a red. Like, everyone can see that straight away. It took the whole thing from the foul to Declan Rice resuming with the throw-in was 5 minutes. And it's just like, that is just not needed. It's just not needed.
Yeah, I just think we've got away from this, from what... For VAR, for me, was to just eliminate the howlers, the ones that ended up... The Henry handball against Ireland in the World Cup playoff. That kind of thing was always what I thought VAR was going to be brought in for. The problem is that it's very hard to implement. This technology can only be used for that's not an easy rule to write, and I think that football's got caught up in the vortex of, well, if we're going to check for that, why don't we check for this? If we're going to check for this, why don't we check for that? And it's got into such a muddle. I actually think that in the past few weeks, I haven't noticed VAR as much as normal. Obviously, Fulham were, I'm still angry about the Josh King disallowed goal at Chelsea, and what a moment that could have been for, he still hasn't scored a Premier League goal. That was his first ever senior goal, and the fact that was taken away, and I guess it doesn't really matter that it was his first goal and he's an 18-year-old, but it mattered to Fulham fans. That was such a big moment, and the fact that was taken away for something that no one could tell or really understand why it was a nothing moment from Rodrigo Muniz, and we just got so far away from what I thought the point of VAR was. However, I think if you just scrap it all together, you just know that week one there'll be another handball, Henry kind of style incident where someone does something egregious. Like, I just think that we've just massively overcomplicated it, but I also appreciate that trying to simplify it isn't that easy.
Well, you said that and about overcomplicating it, but you also made a point about how sometimes the rules are so subjective. So obviously recently we've had two very, very similar set pieces, corners, that one wasn't a goal, the Van Dijk header against Man City, and then you've obviously got the, was it the Forest goal against Liverpool at Anfield? Yeah. Again, one is, one isn't. And I think that's one of the big things about VAR is you can have VAR all you want, but when something's still subjective, it's still not solving anything. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, people love debating ref decisions as well. Like, that is part of the fabric of football. I think if there was a world where every refereeing decision was objectively correct, that would be a massive hole in the weekly football conversation.
Yeah, true.
Gone. And you're right. Like, football is like one of the only subjective sports in the world in that way. Like, if you look at cricket or tennis, it's very black and white. But one thing they have in cricket, which I really like, and I would love for them to implement, is they have like umpires call. So whatever the on-field umpire said, if there's a bit of a grey area, they'll back the on-field decision. I think that gives the officials more autonomy and authority, which I think is needed, or like an appeal system. I think they do that in the NBA, where if a manager wants to appeal a decision or challenge it, they will, and they'll go and check it out. And then like the lengthy checks are kind of built into the game, and it's your when it's your team choosing to have a lengthy check, it kind of makes more sense than a referee. So I think there is, of course, a subjective decisions, but there is ways around it. But VAR is still young, and they're still. I mean, umpire's call was, I think, quite a newish thing after they introduced the Hawkeye. So
the thing is that they've tried to make it the referee's call in football, but it's just not worked.
Yeah,
they're still, and I think referees are still too reliant, and they know ex-referees have come out and talked about how much pressure they're under, and I think when you hear the conversations back a couple of weeks later, you just realise how difficult it is, and I think they're still using VAR as a crutch. I like the idea of an appeal system in principle, but you just know that like goalkeepers going down, like will managers use that tactic? If there's 5 minutes left to go, will you put in a VAR appeal for a nothing thing just to waste a minute? Like whatever you do, people will take advantage of it.
So there you go, guys. Gents, Sammy, Ollie, thank you so much for your hot takes and your opinions there. Guys, in the comment section below, let us know your thoughts, okay? We've been through a lot of hot takes there, so make sure in the comment section below, let us know your opinions. Remember, guys, to check out our sponsors, Bet442. Their sign-up options are on the screen, and there's a link in the description below. And don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe.